Welcome in, everybody. Today we are going to recap and grade all of the Chiefs draft picks from the 2023 draft class. I'm your host, Michael Darcy, and I'm joined by my co-host, Joey Segura. And like I said, we're going to grade each and every single Kansas City Chiefs draft pick from round 1 to 7. But before we do that, why don't we recap last year's season? The Chiefs were obviously able to take home the ultimate prize of another Lombardi trophy. They were able to win Super Bowl 57 against the Philadelphia Eagles. So coming into this draft, we knew that the Chiefs would be picking last. And when you have a team that wins the Super Bowl, you know that you're obviously have a pretty good core to begin with. So I don't know how you felt, Joey, but I was really confident that going into this draft, the Chiefs didn't have to hit it out of the park because their last draft was so good and they already had so many key players coming back that really my focus coming into this draft was going to be on if they could find quality players at positions of need to just be supplemental players. We didn't need stars. We just needed guys to fill in for some of the key departures from this team. What do you think about, the draft mindset going in?
For me, I think it was more about depth. I think that they looked at this roster and they said, really, we have a lot of the holes that we needed filled with last year. That's when we did last offseason. You got MVS. That draft class was so good. You got another 3 to 4 years of productive young players at those positions. I think really they went in looking for help at wide receiver and on the edge as well with the departure of Frank Clark. But besides those two positions, you're basically playing with house money. You have these extra picks. You got to move around, move up, which Veach did a couple different times. But it was more about just going in, getting the depth, and making sure that they had help in case of injuries or strain on the body.
And that's such a luxury when you already have the core intact and all you need is supplemental players, guys that if they have to play can step in and give you something off the bench. I really think there's only one or two guys in this draft class that are going to end up playing significant snaps, and I think that's by design. The Chiefs did not want to have to go out and get guys that would have to play right away. And as you saw in last year's draft class, the pressure was on. The Chiefs needed to hit that out of the park. That's what they did. They had like 7, 8 guys from that draft class that started in the Super Bowl as rookies. So the odds of this draft class triumphing that, it's going to be pretty hard to beat. And quite frankly, I don't think it will. But I still think the Chiefs are walking out of Kansas City with a pretty good draft class. And all of these guys are going to have a chance to develop in this system. And I think that when it comes time, they're going to have an opportunity to at least touch the field. So why don't we start off with our individual draft grades? I do want to preface our draft grades by saying that it is so hard to grade players from the draft when, quite frankly, we don't know what they're going to be. Some guys got picked ahead of schedule, but until they put the pads on and step on the field, we're basically grading this all on potential. They could all suck. They could all be great. Last year, I know that I graded some players differently than others, and I was wrong on some of them. I mean, I did not expect Isaiah Pacheco to be starting in the Super Bowl as a 7th-round pick, but again, that just kind of shows you that the grading scale, it doesn't really mean much. I think I saw something that Patrick Mahomes coming out of the draft was graded like a C-. He turned out pretty good. So we're going to do our best attempt at grading each and every single pick. But again, until they touch the field, until they get in this system with this coaching staff, we can't really give a super accurate depiction of what the players are going to be. So why don't we start off with the first pick? The Chiefs selected at the end of the first round with the final pick in the first round, K-State defensive end Felix Anudike-Uzomah. That's never going to get easier to say. I'm going to give this grade an A-. And I know a lot of people are going to say that, the Chiefs reached at this guy. We talked about this before. At the end of the first round, every guy that you're going to take is basically a second rounder. And I think that the Chiefs wanted to go out and get a guy that, quite frankly, was a hometown kid, a hometown prospect. And on his tape, as you can see right now, the dude's a monster. He's a menace. And I think that that's going to be really key for this defensive line. He's going to fit in so well. He's the Frank Clark replacement. And I think that the Chiefs are in really good hands with Felix. What do you think?
For me, I gave him a B, and that is simply off the fact that I think he has some technical things he needs to work out a little bit. The athleticism is off the charts with Felix. You watch him play, and that's the first thing you notice. He's just so dominant coming off that line. He has an amazing first step, and I think he's going to play a George Karlaftis role too. So I think that takes part of the grade, plays into the grade as well. I think he's going to be a near starter day one. I think come week 7, week 8, around then, he'll be a true starter and making an actual impact on this roster. I went with a B because I don't think the ceiling is there necessarily. I don't think it's absurdly high, and I think that plays into my draft grades a little bit. I think he'll be a very good productive player one day at his ceiling, but I don't see a ceiling as like a star or anything. But at 31, we got the guy that Brett Veach liked, and he's going to be a productive player for years to come. So I think it's a B.
I think that I can give it an A minus because when you look at his production, he's going to have the best chance out of any rookie to play right away. His spot is basically open for him to take. And that's why I think we, on a pure production basis, we can give him an A minus because I think that he's going to play right away. Johnny Utah 718 asks in the chat, who will this season's Pacheco be? He didn't start strong, but he finished as essential to win the Super Bowl. Honestly, that's a really good question. I think when you look at it, it's a little bit different because I don't think that we're coming into this season saying that this guy's going to be an X factor in a Super Bowl. But then again, last season, we didn't go into this year thinking, yeah, Pacheco's going to be like a Super Bowl star and score a touchdown in that game. So it's possible that each and every single one of these guys produces when the lights are the brightest in the biggest games. Honestly, the more that I look at it, I think the guy with the best chance to explode, and we're going to talk about this guy in a minute, Rashee Rice. I think Rashee Rice is going to have a chance to do something on this offense. And quite frankly, with Patrick Mahomes, I think it's just easier for an offensive guy to be that X factor than it would be on the defense. Joey, what do you think about that?
So for Rashee Rice, I wound up actually giving him an A minus, which is the highest grade I gave anybody in this class. And when you just watch his tape, I mean, even there's been issues with drops and things like that, so that's always been listed. But he just plays football at a high level, man. I mean, he goes up and he gets these contested catches. He knows where he needs to be on the field. He just has a good natural feel for the game. He's going to be a playmaker day one for Mahomes. I think he's going to follow more of a Sky Moore path, and I think that's very similar to Karlaftis. How I said he's going to kind of follow. Well, that's what Felix is going to do. He's basically going to follow that kind of path. That's what Rashee Rice is going to do here. He might not make a huge difference right away, but he's going to be in there. He's going to be playing a lot later in the season, and he's basically a Juju replacement to me.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect kind of comp for Rashee Rice. What is your draft grade?
I gave it an A minus. So I said that, like I said, just because of the talent is there, and Patrick Mahomes is going to make good players great, great players elite, and bad players decent. And I think Rashee Rice already is a good player right away. I think he is a B to a B plus level player, but you throw in the Mahomes effect, and I think the fact that he's playing for Andy Reid in Kansas City, he's going to be a great player in this league one day.
In my mind, I'm grading Rashee Rice at a B, and the only reason that I'm grading him at a B right now is I'm worried about his production in year one. He could get the Sky Moore treatment. I think that is more than likely, and so I don't know how productive he's going to be in year one. The only reason that I might say that he's not going to follow the Sky Moore path is because the Chiefs don't have as much at wide receiver as they did last year. Juju Smith-Schuster is gone. I think this was the Juju Smith-Schuster replacement pick. This is obviously a guy that Patrick Mahomes really fell in love with. He basically pushed Brett Veach to get this guy. But you mentioned the drops and the inconsistencies. That does concern me a little bit, and that's kind of why I have him at a B. He's really good at jump ball catches, but like I said in the previous stream, you're really good at jump ball catches because you can't force enough separation. And that's my biggest concern. These are NFL DBs. These are the best players in the world. And if you got problems getting separation in college, I'm concerned if you can do that in the NFL. But I do think that Andy Reid in this offense, he's going to find a way to use Rashee Rice's skill set. And I do think that over time, he could be an A or an A plus. But right now, given what I think he's going to do in like this year, I think he's a B. So why don't we get into the next player? In the third round, the Kansas City Chiefs selected Wanya Morris. I'm going to give this guy a B plus to an A minus. And the reason I have some variation between this grade, I think he's going to have a chance to start at right tackle right away. Obviously, he's raw. He's got a lot to work through. He's really good in the running game. He kind of reminds me of a Trey Smith coming out of the draft. Like, he's a big physical guy that's really good in the run game. He's going to punish you if he can pancake you. And I think that he still has a little bit to do in terms of pass blocking, but the athletic tools are there. We mentioned it in the previous Bleacher Report stream. The athleticism is off the charts. Orlando Brown Jr.'s athleticism wasn't that good. His relative athletic score was like under 1. Wanya Morris has a really high RAS. It's 8.35. He's 6'5", 307. He's a flex guy. Who knows? Maybe he's playing some right guard, some right tackle, but I think when it's all said and done, he's going to have a chance to fight for that opening day right tackle spot. And so that's why I think it's like a B plus to an A minus.
I'm not too far off of you. I give this one a B. It could definitely go up, would not surprise me at all. Coming out of high school, he was a 5-star tackle. So the talent's always been there, raw talent, give it though. So take that with a grain of salt. But he's played also with, it was Trey Smith in Tennessee. So, he's familiar with him. He actually got emotional talking about reuniting with him in Kansas City. And the fact that he also came from Oklahoma, which is Creed Humphrey's alma mater. I don't believe he played there with him. I think he missed him by a year, but still familiar somewhat with the people that Creed is around. So, getting into the O-line day one and having that relationship with those guys is going to be huge. And honestly, KC's O-line overhaul has been great. Really, the only, I think, if you wouldn't even call it a miss, which I would argue it's only because of injuries, is Niang. In the recent years, Veach has really made great moves to plug all the holes at O-line. So I'm not going to question any moves he makes there right now either. It seems like everybody he picks there is going to be solid on the line. So I gave it a B. I think he could be a starter day one. It's really going to depend on what Niang does with injuries and how far Kennard's come. But I think the fact that they even drafted a tackle in the 3rd round shows they're not that confident in Kennard. I feel like if they were, this would not have been the pick here. So I give it a B.
I agree with you, and I think that you really can't stress enough that this seems like the attempted solution to replace Lucas Niang. Lucas Niang has been hyped up a lot, but when he's played, he hasn't been that good, and then he's gotten hurt, and then his first year he sat out because of the COVID stuff. So I don't think this organization is sold at anybody at right tackle, so they had to go out and get Morris. And so I think that, in training camp, as long as he doesn't absolutely choke all over it, I think he's probably going to be the starting right tackle opening day. And so that's pretty exciting. I think that it's just another piece for this offensive line, and successful teams more times than not protect their starting quarterback. And this was a move to ensure that Patrick Mahomes wasn't getting hurt. In the 4th round with the 119th pick, the Kansas City Chiefs selected Virginia Tech safety Chamari Connor. I'm going to give this draft grade a B. And I think that my rationale behind it is because I could see him playing significant snaps right away, at least on the special teams unit. He was a special teamer in college. He's a big hitter, as you can see in the film. I really do think that he's got the instincts that make a good corner. The Chiefs were sold. They traded up to go get him. My biggest concern with him is that, he had a really good combine and a really good, flashing and showing there, but he wasn't really like over the top good in college. He had moments, he had flashes, but I do worry about consistency. But there's one reason that I'm giving this guy a B, and it's because the Chiefs have done it better than anybody else, and specifically Brett Veach, of drafting day 3 corners. L'Jarius Sneed, Joshua Williams, Jalen Watson in last year's draft. They had 2 day 3 draft picks start in the AFC Championship game, and I believe both of them had an interception. So the Chiefs have had tremendous success of drafting cornerbacks later in the draft. And I think that the fact that they traded up to go get this guy means they're sold on his potential and what he could potentially be. And I think that that alone deserves a B grade. And who knows? He could be the L'Jarius Sneed replacement, because the Chiefs have, made it known that, we're not really going to try to pay some guys. So if L'Jarius Sneed only has 1 more year on his contract, Chamari Connor might be a guy that you drafted as an insurance pick for that.
And yeah, my grade's similar to Wanya's, not too far off of yours. I gave it a C plus, and I just say this because I do feel like it was a tiny bit of a reach in the 4th round. The NFL.com projected him as a 6th rounder. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with that, because I feel like they're actually pretty harsh on a lot of their prospect ratings there. But Brett Veach went up and got the guy he liked, and as you said, he doesn't miss on day 3 defensive backs, really. I mean, that's just a strong suit of his. And honestly, I think he's going to make an impact day 1 on the special team side. And he's going to play a lot of snaps there. I don't know how much he's going to actually play on the defensive side of the ball year one, just because I feel like the rookies we had last year in the late rounds showed a lot of promise, and I think they're going to get more playing time this year, and they're only going to get better. So I'm not sure how well he fits in day one there, but he's so versatile. I'm sure he'll find his way into rotations later into the year on that side. And also, he's a great leader. So even if he's not a guy who plays a ton, he's young enough, but he's similar in age to the defensive backs we have now. He's going to be able to help keep their head cool, keep them level headed, and hopefully be a good voice in the locker room for a deep postseason run.
I think that when you look at it, he doesn't have to play right away in the secondary. He's a guy that can kind of earn his, paycheck on special teams, be a Dave Tobe specialist, and if he finds his way into the rotation, great. But I do think that, his versatility offers a lot. He can play safety, he can play slot corner, he can be just a normal corner. I think that's really important when looking at a DB, that he can play multiple positions. You mentioned his leadership, that's so big. And I think that, he could see some snaps, because if you would have asked me last year if Jalen Watson and Joshua Williams would play some major snaps in championship games, I wouldn't have believed you. I thought those were guys that were going to kind of have to work their way up from special teams. But one other aspect of the cornerback group, guys are getting hurt left and right. That's just what cornerbacks do. So having more guys to kind of fill up the depth in that position, I think it's really important. And the Chiefs continue to address that need later in the draft. But why don't we get to the next pick? Because this one was questionable for a lot of people. In the 5th round, the Kansas City Chiefs selected Stephen F. Austin State edge rusher B.J. Thompson. B.J. Thompson was an interesting pick. This is a guy that played at Baylor, then transferred to Stephen F. Austin. I'm going to grade this guy a C minus, possibly a D. And I know that Chiefs fans might not like that, but when you look at kind of what he did in college, first of all, you really can't find much tape on him whatsoever. I think the Chiefs drafted this guy purely on his relative athletic score, or just the athleticism that he brings to the table. He had a 9.01 RAS out of 10, obviously. So he tested really well. But when you look at him, and I think Joey told me off stream that he's 26 years old, that's a really old draft pick. And you took him in the 5th round. Some people say that it was a stretch to pick him in the 5th round. This pick, to me, is kind of what a Joshua Kando pick was like a few years ago. A guy that has the athleticism, but he really didn't do anything in college, and they're hoping to kind of try to salvage some of that athleticism and pure raw talent and turn it into something. I'm not sure if I believe that. I think the Chiefs kind of took a swing here, but I will say, when you win Super Bowls, you can take swings. So I'm going to give this grade a C minus, possibly a D. I can't see him playing very much, if at all. He could be a practice squad guy. I'm not really sure, but I do think that the Chiefs probably took a swing here on a guy that probably won't end up being much.
I have the exact same grade that you do. I have it as a C minus, and you could lean to a D. The only reason I mainly have it at a C minus is it is later rounds. So, and the position the Chiefs were in going into the draft, they could take a couple swings like this. Like we said, he's a freak athlete. He has more of a basketball player body build, if that makes sense. He's taller, he's lankier, he needs to put on muscle. He was in the 1 percentile for bench press. Not that to me is that important. I think if you can play football, you can play football. The combine doesn't matter that much. But he needs to put on strength. I'm not too worried about that. I think he will. But I'm not sure what impact he's ever going to have here. And it's not that I'm against taking swings like this, because I love players with high potential. To me, that is a lot of fun. I think that's a great thing to do sometimes in certain positions. But when you're 26 and you're looking at this guy as a 2 to 3 year project, well, by the time he's able to contribute at a high level, he's already 30. So, to me, it's just kind of like, I don't understand the point there. If he was 22, 21, and, he's 25 or 26 when he develops, okay, that's one thing. 30 is kind of old. 29 is kind of old. And not that I don't think he can ever become a decent player, because anything's possible in Kansas City, and he's a freak athlete, like I said. But I don't look at this pick as a giant game changer, and I think they could have gotten him a lot lower than the 5th round. I don't think he was a guy you needed to draft there, but I do believe in the Kansas City development system.
Me too. I couldn't agree more. Really quickly, I want to give a shout out to KC_sports, the beat of KC48. Shout out to Lucas in the chat. JT Lilac, David Meets World. Thank you guys all watching this Bleacher Report live stream of us grading the Kansas City Chiefs 2023 draft class. Let us know down in the comments what you guys think of all these picks. What do you grade these players? Because everybody's grade is going to be different. Everybody thinks that, a specific player is going to be great. I know that after standing for 7 hours straight at the NFL draft, day one, I hope Felix is a Hall of Famer because all the pain that we had to endure, I would really appreciate it if he could give us our investment back. But the next player that I wanted to talk about was the 6th round pick of the Kansas City Chiefs, and that is Texas defensive tackle Keandre Coburn. I'm going to give this guy a C+. I think that he's got a lot to offer in terms of stopping the run. He's kind of a shorter and stouter guy, but he's really good at stopping the run. In my opinion, he doesn't offer too much in terms of pass rush. I mean, he's kind of able to force some pressure, but he's undersized technically for a nose tackle. But I think that his athleticism it leaves a little bit to be desired. It was a 5.25 on the relative athletic score metric, but he really reminds me of like a Derek Nottie type. He's somebody that's going to stop the run first, uses quick feet and just ability to plug up gaps. He's going to be the Derek Nottie replacement, or at least the guy that if Derek Nottie gets hurt or Tershawn Wharton gets hurt, he can come in and kind of give you some snaps off the bench and be a pretty solid player. The only reason that I'm going to give him a C+ is I can't guarantee that he's going to play a lot in his rookie season. I think it could take some time to develop, and he might try to put on a little bit of size. Who knows? But I do think that this was a good pick. The only reason I'm giving it a C+ is because I really can't guarantee how much he's going to play.
So I'm similar to that. I think I lean more towards a C+, but I could also give it a C. And he's a very good run stopper. I mean, that's where he specializes, so he's great in that kind of formation or scheme. But the pass, not great there. Not that he can't improve. He's still, I mean, he's an undersized guy, but he's a big dude for his size as well. But I think this production wasn't there too much in college. So like I said on the previous stream, if that's what you're looking for, you're not going to be blown away by this guy. I believe he only had a sack and a half this past season. But I think he'll be a decent rotational piece. I don't think he'll ever be a top-end starter. I don't think he'll ever be a permanent starter in the NFL. I think he could be a rotational piece for years to come, and that's playing 30-40% of snaps to help stop the run if you have a dominant running back you're playing against, things like that. But here in the 6th round, I think this is good value. They more depth. That's what Kansas City needed. Like I said, more depth. That's what they were going into this draft looking to achieve. That's what they got here with Coburn.
Especially because you lost Colin Saunders in the offseason, and I think Derek Nottie just signed like a 1-year deal, or maybe he's on the last year of his deal, but having a guy that could kind of take some of the pressure off, I mean, just like cornerbacks, defensive tackles get beat up. And so having guys that can come off the bench and give you something, I think it's pretty big. And this pick could be like a B. I'm not saying that it couldn't be a lot better, but in my opinion, this is going to be a guy that doesn't play right away. And even when he does play, nobody really appreciates or respects what Derek Nottie does for this football team. I think Derek Nottie's a fantastic player. He does his job. He does it well. He's not a flashy guy. He's not going to sack the quarterback 5 times. He might occasionally get to him, but what he does and what he offers in the running game is invaluable. So I really do think that Keandre Coburn could be a guy that steps up big in the running game. And with the final pick in the Kansas City Chiefs 2023 draft class, the Kansas City Chiefs selected Ball State cornerback Nick Jones. I'm going to give this guy a C. He had a medium RAS, a 6.30. That's out of 10. If you're in the later rounds, I'd like to go with somebody with a higher athleticism just because he came from a kind of a smaller school where you didn't face off against great competition. But I do think that, he could offer something because, like we saw last year, 7th round picks ended up being pretty darn good. So I would say that, you can't write this guy off, but I will say that I couldn't tell you too much about him. I think that, from what I read on NFL.com, he's a ball hawk. He can pick the guys off. But I do think that, his tendency to run routes and jump routes that wide receivers are running could get him into some trouble at the NFL level. So this is just purely a pick in my mind that, the Chiefs defensive backs coaches are going to take a look at and try to, manipulate and see what they can turn him into. But right now, I don't really see him playing much. If you don't think that Connor's going to play very much, Joey, I doubt that you're very high on Nick Jones.
Yeah, and I want to make it clear so it's not that I'm not high on the player themselves. It's not that I think they're bad players. It's just tough. I think we have a fairly deep defensive backfield now, especially. And I gave Nick Jones a C minus just because I don't love the athleticism fit there. I think a little bit later you might as well swing for a more athletic player. But he's a ball hawk. He plays hard, and he can read the receiver's eye very well on defense. So he makes a lot of plays with his back to the ball. Um, Decent special teams guy I think he could be. Once again, it's hard to get anything in the 7th round lower than a C just because it's a 7th round pick. These guys aren't expected to come in and be starters right away or be stars or anything. So it's a decent pick. I don't mind it. Don't have a true opinion. That's why I kind of gave it a C minus to a C.
I'm kind of neutral too. I think that it's literally it's kind of a throwaway pick. I don't want to say that, but if he comes in and does fantastic, awesome. If he comes in and doesn't make the team, he's a 7th round pick. You're not really losing much, but the Chiefs got a guy that they think could at least fill some need on the special teams unit or maybe on the practice squad. Who knows? But I do really like the pick of picking up more defensive backs in the later rounds. So, Joey, while we have this time, why don't we give our final draft grade of the overall class? We just gave our pick or our grade on each and every single pick in the Chiefs draft class. I honestly think the Chiefs had about a B to a B plus draft. I think that, I didn't walk away from this draft thinking, oh my gosh, we just hit the mother load. But I am walking out of this draft saying that we got good players at positions of need. We didn't have that many positions that needed to be filled. And I think that they got guys to be depth players. And I really like that. So I think that, yeah, they might not be flashy players. They might not be superstars. But when you're the Kansas City Chiefs and you have all of this talent on the field and this coaching staff, all you need is guys to come in and just be supplemental players. And that's what the Chiefs found in this draft. And that's why I personally give it a B. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not too far off of that. I gave it a B minus, and that's not because I think the Chiefs could have done a whole lot better in it. I think they did about the best that they could with the hand that they were dealt. But I just don't think this draft was that great, personally. Last year's draft was pretty stacked, and we discussed this the other night off air. We left the last year's draft thinking, okay, you know what, this could be a really good draft, and it's kind of shown to be that was the truth. I like a lot of the picks here early on. The first 3 picks that we made, I think, were very solid, and I think there's decent ones later on as well, like Coburn and Shamari. But I just look at this draft. They got the depth. They got what they were looking for, so I gave it a B minus. Nothing flashy. It could be a B as well, though. You could persuade me either way, probably.
I also think that, who knows, over time, this could be a draft class that turns into a B plus or maybe even an A. Brett Veach has done some fantastic things in the draft, and I would not be shocked whatsoever if he was able to really turn these guys into something special. So why don't I recap once again? We gave Felix Anudike, Uzama an A minus. We gave Rashee Rice a B, but could be an A minus. It kind of just depends on how he progresses in this system year 1. We gave Wanya Morris a B plus to an A minus. We gave cornerback Jamari Connor a B. We gave Stephen F. Austin, edge rusher, B.J. Thompson a C minus, possibly a D, depending on how much he plays or if he plays at all. We gave tackle Keandre Coburn a C plus. He could be the Derek Nadi replacement. And we gave Nick Jones a C. So, Chiefs Kingdom, let me know your draft grades in the comments down below. Thank you so much for listening. For Joey Segura, I am Michael Darcy. You just listened to the Kansas City Chiefs 2023 draft class grades presented by Bleacher Report.